Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another rambling movie review. I'm your humble bard, Tim, and today we're going to look at probably one of the most difficult Dungeons and Dragons movies to find anywhere: The Book of Vile Darkness, Dungeons and Dragons 3. Now, before we begin, I just want to say how difficult it was trying to track down a copy of this movie in order to review it, because it's nowhere to be found on Amazon, at least here in Australia. None of the streaming services have it. The only version of it that I found on YouTube, an illegal copy, of course, was in a different language that I did not understand. So after going to all of the secondhand DVD places trying to track down this thing, I eventually went onto eBay, where I sourced one copy on eBay. The other copy that I found was on a website here in Australia that wanted about 90 Australian dollars for the DVD itself, plus another 90 postage, and that just was not going to fly. So to eBay I went, and I discovered a single copy of it for sale from the UK, which I purchased, and then I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and then it apparently had gotten lost in the mail. And so back to eBay I went, and I managed to find another copy, which I purchased, and I waited, and I waited, and it finally showed up today. So now we have a copy that I can actually review, and I hope you all appreciate what I go through in order to get these reviews out to you, at least before the new movie comes out. So, let's jump into The Book of Vile Darkness. So before we get too far into it, I'm just going to read the back of this thing for you all. A noble warrior must battle dragons and demons while upholding his moral code. He covertly joins a group of villains seeking the lost book of vile darkness in order to rescue his kidnapped father from their leader, Shathrax the Mind Flayer. Shathrax plans to conquer the world using the book. So not a great deal of information, but, enough. A very basic synopsis for this one. One thing I will say before jumping into this one is that this is a much more interesting story, at least to me, in that it is a good person jumping into an evil campaign or joining a group of evil adventurers. And so you always have that problem whenever you've played a game of Dungeons and Dragons where you're that one good person in a group of murder hobos and you don't quite know how to get along with it. I think this movie actually goes along with that really, really well. So anyway, let's jump into Dungeons and Dragons 3, The Book of Vile Darkness. Please be advised, there are spoilers ahead. You have been warned. As the credits roll, we are introduced to the backstory of the Book of Vile Darkness. A very nasty man named Nagul made a deal with a group of demons, selling his soul in order to be able to pen an evil, evil book known as the Book of Vile Darkness. The evil of this book was such that he had his own skin removed in order to make pages, his own bones removed and pounded into the cover in order to make that, and then his own blood was used to create the ink with which to pen the book. I'm not exactly sure how he survived, but I'm guessing being as evil as he was and the deals that he made, he was able to survive the process of creating this book. The evils of this book was so much that anyone who read from it or heard from it was just turned into madness unless they were evil. And using the power of the book, he was able to take over the entire world. That was until a group of paladins following Pelor rose up and formed an adventuring party, I guess, and overthrew him, managing to strike down all of his followers. Sensing defeat, they took the book and they broke it up into three pieces. They tore the cover off, they tore the pages off, and somehow they removed the ink from the pages. So they basically unwrote the book and then separated it so that when the time was right, they would be able to reform the book. Unfortunately for them, the knights managed to track down the ink and destroy it, but they were not able to track down the cover or the pages. And so those pieces have been left and lost to history. And so that is where the story begins. 5,000 years after the destruction of the Book of Vile Darkness, where the Paladins are introducing a new member to their group. As the movie opens, we are introduced to our main protagonist, Grayson. Grayson is the latest inductee into the Knights of Pelor, or the Knights of the New Sun, as they are known in this story. He is being inducted in by his father. And unfortunately for him, it does not go quite as well as you would hope. Just as he finishes taking his vows, a group of barbarians attack, and unfortunately, the Knights of the New Sun aren't really all they're cracked up to be, because every single one of them gets killed. It's a bit of a shame, though, because unfortunately we don't actually get to see them fight. They just run off into the woods, it fades to black, and then it all fades back up, and everyone is dead except for Grayson. Unable to locate his father in the massacre, Grayson makes his way to the local village, hoping to track down the people that took him. And he comes across a very helpful young lady. Well, when I say young lady, I mean a lady of the night who has been servicing the people that actually took his father. Asking her for help, she agrees because her brother was actually one of the knights before he was killed. And so she takes him to a magic shop, like all adventurers should begin, right to the place where he can buy all of his equipment. He purchases for himself a vicious blade, a set of paragon plate, as well as a bag of holding and a ring of force. He has a hell of a lot of money because all of the people, all of the other knights, I should say, took up a collection for him. And so he has the gold with which to purchase all of these very expensive magic items. And he's also given a vial of poison by his new friend in order to protect him in case he happens to get captured. After the shopping mission, she then directs him to a tavern in order to locate the evil adventuring party that he has to join. And it is here that we are introduced to the rest of the party. And as all good adventures begin in D&D, they begin in a tavern. We get introduced to our characters. Seth, the human assassin. Accordia, the Shadakai witch and leader of the group. Vimac, the Goliath barbarian, and probably the best character in this whole movie, Bez, the Vermin Lord. In order to prove himself, the party insists that he strikes down someone in the tavern in cold blood in order to prove that he is as evil and cold-blooded as all of them. But fortunately for him, the fifth member of the party decides to try and stab him in the back, and Grayson, in self-defense, kills this individual, and so doesn't actually have to kill the innocent that he was going to be forced to do. And with the death of this character, the party is formed, and they set off on their adventure. Bez and Accordia have put this group together in order to track down a MacGuffin, a horn that will allow them to gain access to the cover of the Book of Vile Darkness. As the group is traveling along, they have a little bit of banter, and here's one of my favorite lines in the whole film. Seth puts his hand on Grayson's shoulder and said, "It'll be difficult for you to fight with only one hand." And he goes, "I'm proficient with both hands." So he's taken the two-handed proficiency feat. Absolutely love that moment. So it's a very classic D&D bit of banter there. Their conversation is interrupted by the sounds of a dragon flying overhead. And they get to the ridge in order to see this dragon attacking a village. This is actually their target. The dragon apparently has something in its hoard that they need in order to complete their quest. And this is where you get to see like the evilness of the group sort of begin to come out, because they realize, well, okay, the dragon's not attacking us. Let's just let the dragon eat its fill, and then we'll be able to get it while it's asleep. And they said, how long will we need? Oh, maybe take 2 hours. That'll be 3 hours. No, 2.5. One of them was a child. So they they have to wait for 2.5 hours until the dragon finishes eating the people and the child, and then they go in to seek their treasure. Approaching the dragon's lair, they accidentally set off a trap which awakens the sleeping dragon, and so once more, 3 for 3 in all of the Dungeons and Dragons movies. They must fight a dragon kind of in a dungeon. It's more of a cave, but I'm going to give it to them. So 3 for 3, they've done it. Three dragons in 3 dungeons in 3 Dungeons and Dragons movies. Accordia attempts to use one of her beads of force to drop rocks down on top of the dragon. Doesn't work, and she gets pinned down by it, so then Grayson has to come to the rescue. He takes his sword and stabs it into the dragon's leg, preventing it from killing her, and then he gets to her and grabs one of her beads of force, getting the command word so that he can complete the job that she failed to do, and successfully throwing the stone up and bringing the rocks down on top of the dragon, slaying it. After looting the dragon's hoard, they find only this chest, the only thing of value according to Vimac. Seth, being the rogue, uses his tools to disarm the trap or trigger the trap that would have fried one of them if they do, and they get what they came for. A very nasty looking horn of some kind. Grayson then shows up with one of the captured villagers, much to the annoyance of of Accordia, who's like, "What is that thing?" And Seth actually wants to kill the villager because of his religion. If the only thing that the weak people in the world are there for is so that he can kill them, because his goddess is the goddess of death, and killing someone brings them to this person. Grayson manages to convince the group that they should rescue the people and take them back to the village so that they'll be rewarded as heroes. They'll have an additional reward other than the horn that they got, and then they'll be able to be seen as heroes. And so the party agrees. Returning the captors to the village, as well as returning the scepter to the mayor of the town, the group are welcomed as heroes, thus letting this evil into their village. A Trojan horse in a world that doesn't have Trojans. And this is where we get another really good moment in the movie. You have Bez and Grayson having a conversation about feeling good, about doing good. And Bez offers the tail of the dragon to Grayson as a trophy, since he was the dragon slayer. And this is where Bez gives him a little proverb. He says, "Do you ever catch a raccoon? You put an apple in a box, and then you cut a hole in the side that isn't big enough for the apple to come out. The raccoon grabs the apple and is so happy that he has it, he doesn't see the rock coming down to crush him in the head, thus foreshadowing that he knows that Grayson isn't meant to be here, and this is obviously a trap." Meanwhile, that night, Seth takes a potion of invisibility and follows the mayor while he takes the staff to the town's treasury. Unlocking a secret door, he gets stabbed right in the back by Bez. Of course, the invisibility wears off because it wasn't a greater invisibility potion, and he made an attack. And so, with this guy bleeding out, they now have access to the town's treasure. Part 2 of their evil plan now complete. Meanwhile, Accordia has taken Grayson to her quarters in order to reward him for saving her life. According to their traditions, if he rescues one of their women, the man is able to do whatever he wants with the woman. So not being one to break with tradition, Accordia is going to give Grayson a good time. But he discovers this little device in her room, and when he places it on his head, he actually sees visions of his father being tied to a really disturbing looking rack. And this person is saying, "Yes, it will be ready soon, Lord Shathrak." So he knows he's on the right track. The next morning, you can tell that Grayson's had a very good time with these massive claw marks on his chest after spending the night with Accordia. And he's a little bit shocked and dismayed about this whole situation, I think. I don't think he was expecting to have to sleep with someone in order to rescue his father, but that's what you have to do when you're on a quest, even if you're on an evil quest. As the party attempts to leave the next morning after stealing all of the treasure, they find that the doors are locked from the outside. The village knows what they have done and are prepared to take them all on in order to prevent them from taking all of their treasure. Accordia uses her spell to put her necklace around the neck of the mayor, saying that she'll say the command word and detonate it and blow his head completely off if the gate is not open. But he is steadfast in his determination not to let these people rob his town. And that is until Grayson steps in. Grayson says, "Look, we'll take half. You can keep half, we'll take half, and that way you can let us go." So trying to find the middle ground, not wanting to get killed, but also not wanting to take out the innocents. Again, being the good guy in an evil party. The negotiation's successful. They are allowed to take half. But there's always that one party member in the evil group, and that evil party member is Bez. He activates the necklace, blowing the head of the mayor off, and initiative has to be rolled, and it's time for the village massacre. And anyone who's played D&D knows this moment, where the rest of the group struggles and dice rolls in order to prevent combat from happening, and that one asshole just does that one thing, and then the fight is on. It happens all the time, and I love the fact that it is in this movie, and I think that's what makes Bez the best character in this film. The massacre at the village over, the group takes stock, unable to find Grayson. Grayson actually snuck off and managed to get a bunch of kids out of the city without anyone noticing. So doing his one good deed in the midst of all of the evil. And they assume that he is dead. Accordia is a little bit sad about this, of course. But she doesn't let it bring her down, showing her leadership to the rest of her group. Using her magic, she blows open the gate, which kind of makes me wonder why she didn't do that earlier on before the fight happened, but whatever. It's a cool effect. And the party sees Grayson on the other side of the gate, having gone round the other side. Accordia very happy that he is still alive. With combat completed and the massacre done, it's time to divide the treasure. And this is where things get a little bit complicated for Grayson, because he finds out that the amount of gold that the group has got is going to be more than the reward was going to be for getting the cover to Lord Shathrak's. And so he has to devise a little bit of a strategy. That night, he takes his wineskin, pours the poison that he got at the beginning of the adventure into it, and after talking with Vimac and having a nice heart-to-heart, makes him drink it. Vimac realizes what's going on immediately, going, "Ah, I've been poisoned, assassin!" And he falls down dead. Grayson then uses another one of the items that he got in the magic shop, his bag of holding, which I think is actually kind of a cool moment here. He actually manages to get the entire Goliath into his bag of holding while no one else is watching. And he also puts all of the treasure that they have taken and then throws the bag and the treasure into the lake. The next morning, everyone is very unimpressed with what is going on, especially Accordia, not unable to believe that a 6-foot-tall Goliath wandered off with 60,000 gold worth of treasure and other bits and pieces on his back, and no one notices. So, unfortunately for the the rest of the group, they have to go along with the original plan, which was to take the horn to Lord Shathrax. This is the moment that causes an additional split within the group, because Seth had been promised the horn for his share of the treasure, and he was going to deliver that to Lord Shathrax on his own, or do something else with it. We don't really know what it was. But unfortunately for him, that is no longer the case because they don't have the treasure. And so he attacks Grayson. This doesn't go well for him, of course, because Bez shows up, stings him with a scorpion, and he falls down dead. Our party now reduced to 3. The party then heads off to their next destination in order to use the horn for what it was intended for. Placing the horn back to where it belongs unlocks probably one of the weirdest encounters I've ever come across, and probably one of the coolest moments in the movie. Again, there's a lot of cool moments in this movie, but this one is just, it's cool, but it's also really, really weird. In the clearing, they see this strange figure, and according to Bez, it is an undead child. And according to this creature, that if you feed it, it will give them what it is that they have come from. But it feeds on negative emotions or negative feelings. So if you have a good soul and you attempt to feed it, that will poison it. If you have an evil soul and you feed it, then it will be happy. And so each of them in turn go up and attempt to feed this creature in order to get what it is they are looking for. Bez, of course, has absolutely no problem with feeding the child because he is just absolute evil. Grayson, while a bit of a rocky start, actually does manage to feed the child, much to his surprise. Bez being incredibly proud of him, saying, "You did it, or rather I say you did it when you killed Vimac." So you know that Bez is no fool. Unfortunately, it does not go as well for Accordia. She's actually fallen in love with Grayson, and because of that, she has love in her soul, and so she poisons the undead child. This, of course, triggers another encounter where they have to roll for initiative and fight a helmed horror. Accordia, once again, gets herself in trouble, because I'm guessing most of her spells do force damage, with which the Helmed Horror is immune to. But Grayson comes to the rescue, stabbing the Helmed Horror through the back of its head with his brand new Vorpal sword that he got from the treasury of the village. And with Bez being stabbed in the back and apparently falling down dead, it looks like it's just the two of them now, Accordia and Grayson. Reaching inside the armor of the Helmed Horror, they find, at last, the cover of the Book of Vile Darkness. Accordia sends a message to Lord Shathrax, letting him know that mission is complete, and they teleport to the evil palace for the final confrontation. Shathrax the Mind Flayer is kind of an interesting character. He has this weird little gem in his head, and he's followed around at all times by these two ladies. He doesn't speak, like he tries to speak, but he can't because his mouth is all sealed up. But these women actually say what he's trying to say as he says it, I'm guessing telepathically. And all of his followers also have those bandanas with the gems in the center of it. So there's like a telepathic connection with the group. So after being welcomed by Shathrax to the Shadowfell, as he says, that's where the palace is, that night Grayson sneaks off in order to find his father. Grayson manages to find his father, but he is not doing all that well. He's strapped to this weird machine contraption, having like his blood all siphoned off for reasons that we are unsure about yet. Once again, unfortunately, he gets caught. Accordia comes in hearing Grayson's dad calling him son, and so the ruse is up, and the fight is once again on. Grayson uses his ring of force to knock down Accordia, and then attempts to get his father out of the building. Grayson takes his father into a different section of the castle in order to get him to climb out of the window. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that they're actually in a castle in the sky, and there's no way for them to escape. Kind of detail you really need to think about when you're planning an escape, especially from an evil fortress somewhere in the Shadowfell. But this is where we find out why Shathrax had Grayson's father kidnapped. What he needs in order to pen the Book of Vile Darkness is the replacement ink. And the replacement ink is actually liquid pain. And in order to create liquid pain, especially the type that they need for the Book of Vile Darkness, they need to torture it out of a pure soul. So basically, they took one of the knights of the new sun and were torturing him in order to prepare him, to corrupt him enough so that his blood would be capable of creating the type of liquid pain that they need for the ink. Grayson's father says to him that he has to be killed in order to prevent the Book of Vile Darkness from being created once more. But Grayson is having none of it. He has done so many bad things to get to this point, and if it all is going to lead to him killing his father, he's not going to do it. And this is where we get our hero moment for Grayson. Grayson gives a massively inspiring speech to his father, saying that as long as one light can shine in the darkness, there will still be hope. And apparently this is enough to actually activate Grayson's medallion that he had this entire time. The holy light of Pelor shines through his medallion and he's able to fend off the bad guys, but once more, Bez, that magnificent bastard, shows up and knocks out Grayson. Grayson's dad attempts to use the medallion, but it doesn't work for him because it's the person who gives power to the amulet, not the other way around. And Grayson is one of the only true believers in the world now that actually believes in the good of Pelor. His father is one of those that doesn't. And so the trap is finally revealed. This whole time, Bez was actually trying to get Grayson here because he needed to corrupt a pure soul such as Grayson in order to make the liquid pain that they need for the ink for the Book of Vile Darkness. And that's where we get that little story he was talking about, the raccoon and the apple and the box. Because Bez was the rock, Grayson was the raccoon, and the apple was his father. And Accordia is a little bit upset about all of this because she realizes now that she's been manipulated this entire time by Bez in order to get Grayson here. And with that, it's time for the final confrontation. Grayson is tied to a machine and tortured in order to extract his liquid pain to pen the Book of Vile Darkness. Accordia, seeing Grayson being tortured, says, you know what, this is not worth it. So she uses her awesome mage hand ability, taking the medallion from Bez's neck, giving it back to Grayson, who uses the power of Grayskull to shoot all of the bad guys with the light of Pelor. And when he hits Lord Shathrax, it travels through all of the other people's medallions in their head, destroying everyone and winning the boss fight in probably the simplest way possible. And with that, Grayson and Accordia say their goodbyes, one going off to do awesome evil things, and Grayson going back to re-establish the order, since every other knight apart from him and his father have been completely destroyed. And as she teleports away, we see that Bez is still alive. It fades to black, thus ending the story. And that was Dungeons & Dragons 3, The Book of Vile Darkness. A very basic story, but if I were to compare this movie to the other two, I actually think this is the best one out of all three. As the budgets for these films got less, I think the stories actually got better. And the fact that this is the story of a good person having to challenge their beliefs and their morals in order to try and rescue their father, like, it's doing evil in order to do good. How far would you actually go? How bad would you be in order to rescue someone that you love and in the end actually save the world? What is your justification for doing those evil things? I think it's just a really, really good story. It does have its silly moments, of course. The bit at the very, very beginning where he visits the magic shop and just buys a whole bunch of gear because he has a shitload of gold. I mean, that's silly, yeah, but you can hand wave that. You don't always have to have the epic moments where they gather up all their equipment. Sometimes in adventures, you can just buy a lot of your gear. Depends what the DM wants to do, whether he wants to give you magic items right off the bat for the beginning of the adventure. And the whole the romance between Accordia and Grayson, it makes sense because Grayson is someone that isn't like the other guys in the party. They're all like, we're awesome and evil, but Grayson is still trying to be nice. He treats her with respect, even in the scene where she has to give herself to him. He actually refuses to take advantage of her right away. He only does it because she is going to kick him out of the group. And so he has to sort of go against what he really wants to do in order to maintain the party cohesion, in order to rescue his father. It says, the things I do to rescue my dad. So it's just a really, really good film. Again, not the best. Again, if you're looking for, spectacular movie blockbusters, you're not going to get that here. But if you're looking for, a relatively solid story to do with a person overcoming evil by potentially becoming evil, or if you've been that good person in a D&D party filled with evil characters, then I can absolutely recommend this film to you. So yeah, that was the Book of Vile Darkness. Probably the most difficult Dungeons & Dragons movie there is to find out there. But if you can find yourself a copy of this film, I highly recommend that you check it out. It is absolutely worth the watch. So if you like this review, and I really do hope you do, just leave a comment down below. So for now, that's where we're going to leave it. So thank you all very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. I have been your humble bard, Tim, and I hope you come back to another one of my rambling movie reviews when I get round to reviewing Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Bye!